first, so then the folks who were at the last version of this meeting and not this one can go to the recording and listen to that. And then we'll also want to spend some time just walking through any questions that any of you had about, hopefully you were all able to take a look at the recording of last week's session where we talked about stormwater, embodied carbon. And if you have any questions or things that you want to talk through about that, we can do that after John does his presentation.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys doing this because yeah, I had the wrong date and yeah, I have my questions lined up here.
Perfect. Yeah, and I'm sure Monty apologizes that he can't be at this one. He's out of town this week, so he'll, I'm sure, watch this recording as well to see what you all have to say. So
sure.
Okay, well, I have this PowerPoint here, and I've never done a PowerPoint with a Zoom meeting, but it told me to go in the upper right, and there should be present to Zoom, but I don't see that. Anybody
yeah,
help?
we're in a Teams meeting. For me, it's in the upper right. There's a share button, but it might be somewhere else if you're on a web browser.
Okay, present, comment, share. There it is. Yeah. Okay. And anyone can share the link, copy the link. Well, it doesn't bring anything up about Teams. Interesting.
If it would be easier, John, you can also email a version of it to me and I can run the show and you can tell me when to advance.
Okay. Play from the beginning, present live. Let's try that. Did say anything pop up on your screen?
No.
No. Okay. Well, I was looking at this before I joined the meeting, and
what do you see when you click? When you click the share sign, if you click it, it should pop up a window.
Mhm.
And then if you look down, there should be a spot that says share screen. Do you see that?
No, it wants to send a link, even though I press share. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I think I'm going to email this to you. Okay.
Yep.
Down here. Save as. Okay, I'm going to try to use that share link to email it to you. Okay, hang on here. Okay. And your email?
Becky, BECKY, .Alexander, ALEXANDER, at LHBcorp.com.
There you are. Okay, here it goes. Well, it's disappointing that this doesn't work like it should. First with coach, play from the beginning, present live. Yeah.
Are you trying to share it from the Teams window, John, or are you in like a PowerPoint window or a
PowerPoint. I'm in the actual presentation.
are you? I'm not seeing it come through. Just while we're waiting for that to come through, can you check if you open your Teams browser, whether it's in a web version or? a desktop app.
Show. Okay, so let's try this again here. Share. Anyone with the link can edit. Okay. That's what I sent to you. I'm sorry, I was distracted. What were you saying? What should I check?
Open your Teams browser.
Okay. You mean the Teams meeting?
Yeah, the Teams meeting that we're in right now.
Okay.
And then is there any option to share within that?
Share via default email, copy link.
It shouldn't be sharing a link. It should just be sharing your screen. I don't know if we're seeing the same thing as each other because I'm in the desktop application. Are any of the other work group members on the online platform? Yanni, you're muted.
Yeah, I'm on the online. I have this for work, so I had to just do it this way. It was easier instead of adding an account. And there's a little bar, and it should have a red circle showing that Andrea's recording, and then a camera, and then a microphone, and then there's a square with an arrow pointing up. That square with the arrow pointing up, click that, and it should have an option for a screen share.
Oh, okay. Desktop. There we go.
Yeah. Yeah. Now we
Okay,
see your whole desktop.
All right. Okay.
Thank you, Yanni.
Yes.
Okay, and there was the share thing I saw right here, which I
Right.
put your email into. Okay, so this is the presentation. Okay. And present. There we go. Everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. Mass timber might be a new term for a lot of you. For some of you, I know it isn't. But this, can you see my mouse moving around on here? Yes, right? Okay, so this is a mass timber building. And there's some elements here. Right where I'm pointing is a cross-laminated timber wall. And this is a glue lam beam. And these are cross-laminated timber sections up in the top here too. And these are other kinds of beams, maybe glue lams, maybe some other ways of making beams. But the key to this is these are structures of wood made from smaller pieces. It used to be there was incredibly large pieces of wood available for a good price from massive Douglas fir trees out west. And for various reasons, they're not quite as available, or they're really expensive now. So engineers have figured out ways to put small pieces of wood and make very large pieces of wood with very similar properties and strength and beauty and everything. And of course, we're talking about this because of carbon sequestration and over the life of the product here. And of course, a building can weigh hundreds of tons, millions of tons, depending on what size it is. So in a structure, you can embody a lot of carbon here. So let's look at a little more detail on mass timber. This is a cross-laminated timber. So these boards here may be like typical 2x6s, only they could be really long. And they're put similar to plywood, where you run grain in one direction, and then you run the grain in the next one, the opposite direction, and it forms a very stiff, dimensionally stable, and if you look at the bottom here, fairly beautiful piece of wood when you're finished. And it can be machined in all different kinds of shapes and be very, very useful. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next one here. And a glue lamb. This is an example of a glue lamb with some hardware attached to it, which again is many pieces of wood. This particular one is bent, they can be straight. And they're all glued together in a press and made into a very, in this case, this arch here, a very, very strong structure, which is pound for pound stronger than steel. And there's no real new technology here. Mass timber has been around. I read some articles that the French started building it over 100 years ago by nailing pieces of wood together into massive panels. But it's becoming very popular now because of for sustainability reasons. Okay, this is what a mass timber light industrial structure can look like. In the top, we've got looks like what are some cross-laminated timbers, or maybe nail laminated timbers. Nail laminate is just another way to do the same thing of putting multiple pieces together to make them thick and change the dimensions and make them larger. And some glue lambs over here. And something interesting about this is you can see that this crane runs right on top of this beam. Wood is plenty strong for that, depending on, of course, what size it is. The engineers figured out the structural properties of wood a long, long time ago, and it can do amazing things. And okay, so next we'll look at wood versus steel and concrete. And of course, this is a very brief presentation. You could spend weeks on going into the details, but I'll just try to hit the high points here. These are some of the concerns with wood if you talk to people. Strength, durability, and fire. Okay, so let's take strength here. This is a Trestle Bridge, the largest one in the United States, and it's made 100% of wood. It's out in the Southwest US, and it was built, I believe, in 1932 or something. And imagine carrying thousands of tons on a train and driving over wood over this gorge, and actually changing direction while you're going over, which puts a tremendous, anybody who drives a car around a corner, you know, you have this centrifugal force going to push you out, and this structure handles it. And it was built a long time ago. We've known how to use wood to build very strong structures for a very long time. We got away from it for various reasons, but it's coming back, and it's about time. It's back to the future all over again here. Durability. There's a wonderful building here in Minneapolis called Butler Square, and it was built in 1906. It's 9 floors tall, and there's been some modifications here to put in an atrium, but it was all wood structure, wood floors, wood beams, posts, 9 floors tall, and it's an amazing building. And it's been around, what, 116 years? And it'll probably be around another 116 years. So durability really isn't an issue. We all know that wood can deteriorate, and that's usually due to water and wood are not a good combination. But we've learned a lot about making wood durable. Of course, in an indoor application here, water isn't going to be an issue. Let's look at this one. Okay, another durability issue. This temple was built in 600 AD in Japan, and it's still standing. It's 5 floors tall. No computers, just human knowledge. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. It's doing just fine. And I would like you to pay particular attention to how large these overhangs are. Because just because it was built a long time ago doesn't mean the people weren't really smart. And these overhangs now you see in modern mass timber buildings, and there's good reason for them. I would like someday to visit this temple. Incredibly interesting, but I'm kind of a wood person. Okay, wood and fire. Now, I first saw the next photograph I'm going to show you when I was in college. I went to the College of Natural Resources in St. Paul, and Dr. Boyer brought this picture up, and it stuck in my head like a sandburr to my brain. I just couldn't get it out of my head, and I looked for it, and I found it. And one picture can show you more about wood and fire than anything. First of all, let's talk a little about wood and fire. Of course, wood burns. And mass timber burns in a very different way. It's very thick, and if any of you have ever done a campfire and tried to put an entire log on there, it takes a very long time to burn into the log any appreciable amount. The outside chars, which becomes kind of an insulator. Far more efficient to chop it into little pieces to get it to burn. So if you take a look at this next picture, this is from 1906 San Francisco. Here you have a grocery store where it started on fire. And these are steel beams. Now, one of the characteristics of steel is that it gets soft when it gets warm, and it gets soft very quickly. It basically loses its strength. Any of you have ever sat and bent a paperclip back and forth, you know it heats up and it starts to get easier and easier as it heats up until it eventually fails. So look at this. This beam, which used to be really big, you can see the spikes sticking out of it, held up these steel beams as they basically melted all through the fire. And who knows how long this fire lasted. But if this isn't a testament for the structural ability of wood to withstand fire, nothing is. I find this to be amazing. And of course, with modern buildings, especially industrial buildings, they have sprinklers. So this kind of fire is not going to be an issue anyway. But I just hope this puts people's fears about wood and fire to rest. Okay, any questions? I'll wait till the end here. Okay, of course, wood captures carbon. And as I showed you, a wood structure can last hundreds of years, 1,400 years if you want. So if you build the right structure and it's designed right and useful, it may be along for hundreds of years while you sequester all of that carbon in the building for that amount of time. And this is the largest industrial carbon capture place in the world. And this seems kind of like a folly to me. It works, but an entire factory to try to capture carbon from the atmosphere uses energy. It's expensive. All of the materials in here took a tremendous amount of carbon to create. All the steel, I'm sure there's a lot of concrete in there. And we have this very simple way that nature figured out how to capture carbon a long time ago. And it's called tree. And it's a fantastic building material. These are plantation forests in the southern US. This is southern yellow pine, which is a very strong version of pine, and very good for construction. And as you can see, depending on how they create these, they can create a very vital forest floor with things deer can eat, animals can eat, places for them to live. And these plantation trees grow fairly quickly, and they store, currently in the southern US, billions of tons of carbon. And I don't know, it's amazing. And you do not need to build factories. Well, we may need to, but it seems like kind of, well, I think it's self-explanatory. I think we'd be farther ahead doing this and storing that carbon. You take these trees out of here and you, of course, sustainably replant them and use that carbon to build structures, because structures take a tremendous amount of carbon in the US, and we're building more and more all the time. We're way behind on housing starts, and there's going to be a lot more buildings built. So mass timber is a good solution for that. Now for some beautiful mass timber structures. This is one of my favorites. This is a 200 by 100 foot mass timber building in the northern Italy. And it's exactly the size that I hope to build at Hillcrest, 20,000 square feet. And notice these long overhangs. Well, as some of you I'm sure know, protecting the wood from the elements is important, right? Everything degrades, whether it's concrete, steel, anything. Your vinyl siding eventually fades and cracks, and you got to replace it. So these overhangs protect the wood from the sun and the water. And they also provide some wonderful shade from the direct sunlight in the summertime, which would come in and overheat the structure internally. So you get the lower rays coming in at this angle come in during the winter, and then the summer, when they come down from this angle, they don't come inside the building. I happen to love this structure. It'd be very expensive to build, but it's my dream at Hillcrest to build this building. And I'm in contact with them. I'm going to get the architecture firm to get the plans for it. But I have a feeling it might come in a little over my budget. And there's a little more windows than I want in here from Minnesota. Okay. And here is the interior of that building, which I don't know, maybe I'm biased, but I think it's beautiful. I would love working in here in light industrial. It's just natural. It's an interesting point. Costco built a wood Costco in California. Their data shows that people stay in that Costco for 22% longer than they stay in their other stores. And Costco can correlate that exactly with purchases. That I don't know what the multiplier is, but people buy more when they stay longer in Costco. As you know, if you ever shop there, it's kind of hard to get out of there without spending $200. So we're on the right track here. We just have to convince a lot of people to make changes, and change is always hard. There's a lot of entrenched businesses, and understandably they're reluctant to change. But the construction industry could easily, they can change, and otherwise there'll be startup companies that build these structures, these beautiful structures. Okay. Where would you want to work? This factory right here, or this one? One of them gives you a pretty good feeling, and this one, I don't know. It doesn't. I've been in factories. I've been working in these things my whole life. Here's where I want to be. So that's all I got.
Thank you so much, John. Let's see if any of the work group members have any questions. And I do just want to acknowledge that we have only a few minutes left in our scheduled half hour here, but Tiffany, I think I speak for both of us when we can stay on at least another up to a half hour if your time is available too. So
I appreciate it. Okay, so I do have a question. Have you seen this done? I've seen some products that are made out of bamboo, and just looking at like that growth cycle or gestation period opposed to, say, yellow pine.
Yes, I was just at the Mass Timber conference in Portland, and I saw samples of bamboo mass timber, where they take the round piece of bamboo and they slice the edges slightly to make it part of it square so that it can be glued together. And it's coming. It is coming, and it's going to come like crazy, because you can watch bamboo grow on a warm, rainy day. Right. So it's just a matter of time before it comes here.
Sure.
So
yeah, because it's just looking at the flooring industry, like your your stranded, what bamboo is, what a 7-year, 3-year product, and then your no, other way around. The stranded is 7-year product, so it's it's a little bit longer opposed to the 3-year quick growth sliced flooring. But
Yeah.
you have something that's so dense that it's harder than oak, so you wear out blades and so on. It's very tough to work with, but much stronger and denser.
Have you seen the bamboo scaffolding?
Yes.
I mean, that goes up 30 stories on the side. It's just amazing. It is amazing material nature's come up with. Yeah. But it's going to be a few years.
Yeah.
Tiffany, did you have a comment?
I did. John, you said you went to a mass timber conference, which sounds really, really interesting. And I was wondering if they discussed anything about soil degradation and how they restore it at these plantation sites, because like 99% of these trees and bamboo is made out of stuff that they're sucking out of the air, which is great. But 1% of it is made out of trace minerals that they're pulling out of the soil. And so, if you're you're essentially farming a plantation and then removing that material off site so those trace minerals don't get restored back to the soil through a decomposition process. Did you hear anything at your conference about how they're addressing soil health in these areas?
No, I didn't, but I have studied the plantations and in the southern U.S. And they're doing everything they can to speed the growth of the trees. So that includes whatever they need to put on the soil, spacing, and they're also working hard with biodiversity. That's been a legitimate criticism of these plantations. So that's why they've changed spacing of trees to allow more light in for the lower level to get, and of course that's going to make a big difference. And they're also harvesting in tracts where they leave areas for longer. So I trust any big company to do what's best for their bottom line. And the interesting thing is that these companies have to think really long term by their nature. The whole business model falls apart without decades long thinking. So I think that's working in our favor for us environmentalists, as opposed to, the alternative. But sorry, I don't have any more details on that.
No, I was just curious. It's the first place that my mind went as a landscape architect. I'm like, well, what about the soil?
Sure.
Yeah, and I will just add that caring for the habitats where these are being harvested is kind of a key differentiator between it being a truly sustainable material and sustainable in some ways, but not in all aspects. And so we can also use certification programs like through FSC to confirm that sustainable harvesting practices and forestry practices are being used.
Yeah, yes, and I have a comment on that. I did visit the FSD booth out there with Annie, and this is key. My building is going to be built out of sustainable timber, which checks all the boxes for what Becky said. And I spoke to her about what the reason they have a booth there is they're trying to convince the designers, architects, everybody to specify sustainable timber for all the new designs. And according to Annie, there's a few different companies who do the sustainable certification. There's a few stragglers left over, but she thinks they're going to come over pretty soon. So this is going to be the new norm, is sustainable, in her opinion. So, yeah.
Any other questions from work group members? Kelia, Rebecca?
I don't, but thank you for sharing that presentation, John. I think overall, yeah, just there's so many just aesthetic aspects of the building using that material that are much more pleasant, but also I think overall it's going to be a more sustainable option than concrete extraction of different materials that way. So yeah, I guess the only thing too about it is as far as like embodied carbon, if that also, so that would also include how the timber is grown. So like everybody else was just mentioning, like that's something I think that can only be improved with time, is like the growing of the timber to support like also a healthy ecosystem. But I'm sorry, I will have to hop off shortly. I just wanted to, I guess, clarify our homework, I suppose. How like thorough does it, how thorough are we looking for? Is it we write 1 to 2 pages, or are we just writing our recommendations?
Yeah, so this is about the end deliverable of work group consensus recommendations. And we're kind of envisioning the final document to be 1 to 2 pages. So if each work group member can contribute anywhere, kind of wherever your priorities are, if it's 1 sentence or 1 bullet point saying net zero energy on site is the most important thing to me, and kind of I trust you with everything else, that's good enough. Or if there are a lot of things that we've talked about or that we haven't talked about that are really important to you that get into this document, or at least get discussed as part of this work group. So it can be anywhere from, a single bullet point or sentence to a few paragraphs or a longer list of things. And we also, since this group, hasn't had the chance until just now to be asking these questions, we're absolutely fine if you want to push back the delivery of that homework until next Wednesday. Send that to Tiffany, Monty, and myself by next Wednesday. Then we'll work on getting those all incorporated into one thing, ideally for you to take another look at, and then come to the May 20th work group meeting ready to discuss.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for coming.
Bye, Keely.
I do have a question on the meeting. Let's see. Can I read my writing?
Yeah.
Oh yes. So geo or district energy is there thought or any plan at this point, other than just heating the buildings, but to use it for a snow melt on parkways, parking lots, and so on?
That's a great question. So yeah, absolutely. That has been brought up many times.
Okay.
Snow melt systems, they need to be strategically located first and foremost. So it would be probably overambitious to expect every parking lot and every sidewalk to have a snow melt system incorporated into it. And this system would need to be sized correctly to make sure that there is enough heat energy available to execute something like that. But depending on how Evergreen is able to conceive of a concept design for the district energy system and how much so-called surplus heat might be available, that's something that can be considered in conjunction with a developer who wants to see that, let's say, on the corner of Larpenteur and McKnight, where there's supposed to be a neighborhood node. So if there's retail space up there, it would be a really logical location to have a snow melt system. If there's a very ambitious light industrial developer, such as John, who's interested in exploring that avenue, there's an upfront installation cost that would be required of the developer in order to pursue that, but it is very feasible that heat energy could be made available.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, because it wouldn't be a bad idea either since the well, you're putting the well in, to at least tap the well and have it available and not used, just so because doing it after the fact can be quite costly. And since the wells are being drilled anyway. But
yeah. And the leading district energy system is called an aquifer thermal energy storage system. And it is a much deeper kind of well than a typical geothermal well field would be. So it's a more stable temperature control mechanism.
oh, nice. Okay.
And instead of having to drill hundreds of wells, we would only need to drill 20.
Got it. Oh, outstanding. And
Heat.
what is it called again?
It's called an ATES system, an
ATES.
aquifer thermal energy storage system.
Perfect.
And I've already been on this project for 2 years, and I'll be on it for 5 to 10 more, and I will advocate for snow melt systems every chance I get.
Outstanding. Okay.
I have one small question. Thank you for the presentation. It was I echo Keely in that aesthetically it was like, wow, that's really cool. Using the timber to build as opposed to concrete and all that other stuff. So my little question is, as far as heating and cooling, how does that compare? I mean, how do the two different building materials compare? Is it more energy, or I mean, I'm not sure. That's fine.
Well, concrete has a very, very low what's called R value. It conducts heat very quickly, and it's cold. If you've ever walked up and touched your basement wall or something, and wood has an R value that's much, much, much higher. It's not considered a really good insulator because we have these wonderful things that entrain a lot of air, like foam and let's say blown cellulose or fiberglass insulation, which trap a lot of air. But it's usually around R1 per inch. And I forget the numbers for concrete, but they're incredibly low. So what they do with the tip-up concrete buildings, they put petroleum-based foam inside of the concrete in a sandwich. So they can get some pretty high values. But it takes more foam, and it's a petroleum-based product. The wood gives you some R value already, and then there are some other natural materials that you can put on the outside, like rock wool, which is made from rock. It looks like fiberglass to get really good insulation, and so it's much better. And steel, of course, also has a terrible R value. It's, of course, used to conduct heat, away, as a heat sink. So you almost can't go wrong with wood. It's if you protect it right, it outperforms everything, I think. Now, if you need a tiny piece of something that's really strong, you're going to need steel. So many of these sections of mass timber are put together with connectors, which are made of steel. Not necessary, but they're pretty cost effective. But it's a small amount of steel compared to how much wood there is. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that was helpful. Thank you.
Are there any other questions there? I know, did the three of you have the chance to watch the recording of last week's session? That was a long one.
Yeah. So I do have a question on what happens with the contaminated soil? I mean, once it's brought off, the stuff that cannot be buried or removed from contact. I mean, how is that treated or managed?
So there are 3 different types of soil on the site, type 1, 2, and 3. Type 1 is just fine, and it's going to be stockpiled and set aside and then reused on site. Type 2 is legally okay, but does have mercury in it. So that's the stuff that's also going to be stockpiled on site and then basically watered down with extra soil until it can be reused on site in non-residential applications. And then type 3 is not okay. It is too contaminated and it is getting shipped off site to a landfill.
Okay, so it goes into an actual landfill then?
Yes, it has been explored from various angles on how to sequester it on site, the way that they've sequestered the contaminated soil at like Gold Medal Park, where they basically built a giant hill, covered it in a clay pancake that is more or less, 99.9% impervious. And then they're just going to bury it until, I guess, the end of time. We looked into it and the serious considerations on how to keep it on site to not have to shift this contamination issue offsite. But it is actually the most practical path forward to get all of the other things on site that we want, like a district energy system, where now you have to periodically have wells puncturing what would be contaminated soil. We looked at putting it under the right of way, like way below all the sewer lines and stuff. And it's just not enough volume through surface area. We would have to excavate down like 50 to 80 feet in some spots to do it. And it doesn't make sense to pursue.
So, yeah, so I mean, that's, so it goes into landfill. I was just wondering if there was a process of treatment, like a fire process, because there's certain contaminants you can fire the soil or, you know.
For the mercury, to my knowledge, and
Well,
which is,
I suppose it would go up, right?
yeah, it's not like you can suck it out of the soil effectively. There are certain types of contaminants that you can actually take out of the soil when you plant sunflowers on top of it. I do not know of any like biological treatment that can actually remove the mercury from the soil. I do not know of any straining or firing process that removes the mercury. What we're hoping to do is take the really bad stuff off site and then take the stuff that's legally okay, but I wouldn't be comfortable with my kid digging a hole in that dirt and watering it down with clean topsoil.
Sure. Okay.
And you said that was like 4 feet deep?
1 to 3 feet deep in most areas of contamination. The mercury contamination came from this repetitive fungicide application that they were doing from the 1930s to the late 70s and maybe the early 80s. The soil on the site is very, very clayey, so water would pond up. There's no modern stormwater treatment system or drainage system on the site, so the water would puddle up everywhere on their very clayey site, and they would end up with fungus growth. So it's been hosed down with fungicide a lot more than the average golf course that was open during that period of time when that treatment was available. So it has much higher levels of contamination than the average golf course does at this point in time.
Got it. And were there any gray water systems looked at? Like I know North Oaks Golf Course has one they're proud about, but that, and then like aquifer turbines, inline sewer turbines. I know they're costly at this point, but just if it was looked at all.
So that's a really good question as well, because gray water is one of the sustainable prongs that isn't really being explored in a aggressive way for this site. Like, we're doing a lot of things with energy production and geothermal energy, district stormwater management, and just the general methodologies of building construction. But gray water and black water, there is no overall plan for treatment or reuse on site. So we are hoping that individual owner users will elect to capture their gray water and reuse it in an irrigation-based application, but we have not had any expressed intention of requiring them to do so.
Sure. Yeah, I just have, I'm reading the notes and with Monty's sentiments about his daughters. This is the reason I like this field of work, is my children, and now it's, and then you start looking past and it's their children and everybody else, right?
I got misty. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, and I didn't realize that you guys had done such great work with the Phelan Creek. I have some property where some of the watershed feeds into it underground, and that was just made me proud, even more proud to be here.
Yes.
Really.
Yeah. I think that the Port Authority has done some amazing work with their stormwater management, which is slightly different from like a gray water system and reuse and recapture and reuse. So the district stormwater system will be very much like on the edge of best management practice and pushing beyond what the watershed district is going to require us to do anyway. But gray water reuse would be on a case-by-case basis.
And then build, I know, you know, like some sustainable build can be done with the concept of we may need to expand further down instead of just closing end your envelope or your box, and having that built-in option. So it's much easier to expand on a property. Is that anything that may be asked of, or I suppose that'll be left up to the commercial designers or companies?
If I'm understanding your question, I like whether or not there's consideration for property expansion just in general at a high land use level.
Well, no, when you're actually doing your framework for your building, you can do some integration of expansion down the road. So you would do your complete build, but have it with just opened up, beam system, that type of thing. So it's much easier to expand on it rather than having a whole demolition and having to take half the building out to reintegrate your support group or your in your case, John, your timbers, you'd be easier to lock into them or tie into it.
Well, that's really interesting because I'm in possession of a presentation done in the 70s about tip-up wood buildings that were built in the Port of Long Beach, huge tip-up wood buildings. So, it's all been done before. And my building is going to be bolt together the tip-ups. So expansion is a big deal for me.
Yeah.
Without moving,
Right.
So if long after I'm gone, if somebody wanted to disassemble the building and move it somewhere else and add to it, they certainly could.
Sure.
And I think that's a critical component. So if you're going to sequester the carbon, let's say for 100 years, why not 500? Just by making your building easily expandable, right?
Right.
So, yeah, it's I don't know. There's so much that can be done that we're not doing in every facet of human existence. Really, we just
100%. Well, embodied carbon. I mean,
it's not hard.
Look at our cell phones and computers. I mean, they have a year shelf life. Come on. But,
right.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and then I can tell you that insofar as property expansion goes, that first of all, the Port Authority is not interested in selling large parcels of property that like an owner user would set aside 5 acres and be like, we'll build on it someday. They are not interested in doing that. They are interested in having this site built out within the next 10 years. For the light industrial parcels, they have a minimum FAR of 0.35. So 35% of the parcel has to be covered in building. So it's not underbuilt and underused. And then I think the hope longer term is that the large parking lots that are typically associated with light industrial developments are the spaces into which these businesses are expanded as we start transitioning away from individual car ownership and towards hopefully an electrical vehicle fleet that is working with the employees and the residents in tandem.
Or mass transit. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. That would also be great.
Yeah.
What about going up?
Going up, there's nothing saying people can't. There are a lot of market pressures saying why they wouldn't want to. But I don't think anyone at the Port Authority would say you cannot build a 2-story light industrial building. I think they would be super gung-ho for it if an owner user thought that it made sense for them financially to do that.
Sure. So there's a better case in point than what I was trying to explain. Is just building the load in, so you could do that.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, and John, your intention is to build a 10,000 square foot mezzanine, right? In your 20,000 square foot building.
Yeah. So I'm doing that with my design. Be able to add a second floor, which will be 50% covering. or more. I need the full height in the back for pallet racks, because the most efficient way is to go up with those high as you can. Now they have fork trucks that go up 60 feet. I mean, they keep pushing it. It's amazing what they're doing. But yeah, so I can expand. And it's critical if you've got a long-term view of your business, you know.
Right.
And that location is going to be so incredible that
Yeah.
I never want to move as far as I'm concerned. I just know it's going to be great. Yeah. Everybody's going to want one.
Right, right. So I do have my homework. You want me to just email it over instead of blabbing? So-
Yes,
so-
please.
So thank you very much for accommodating my missed meeting the last week.
Oh, I wasn't the only one. There's two now.
No, yeah, it was half the team. So thank you so much for following up and coming to this, Rebecca.
I
Thank
appreciate
you,
it. I
Rebecca.
could stay longer, but thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you for all your good questions and your knowledge. It's like preaching to the choir here. You get what I said. It's great. I get what you guys said too. Okay, thank you.
All
Okay.
right. Thank you.
Okay.
I have no more
Thanks,
questions.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
You good? See you later.